Who doesn't love console stereos? When I was growing up, we had one in my grandparents' house, and while I never really dove into it and played with it because, well, frankly, I was a kid and I wasn't allowed to touch it, I do have fond memories of it and do remember a lot of really great music being played through it. And so when the opportunity came to review Andover Audio's new Model One turntable music system, I jumped at it because, well, it is a console stereo for 2020. And yes, it has a turntable. Yes, it has built-in speakers. It even has the option for a subwoofer, but it has all of the modern conveniences one could also want and need in today's era. Before we get into what makes the Model One so unique, I kind of feel like we have to address the elephant in the room, which is its price. It's $24.99, not $24.99, but $2,499. And that is just for the Model One, the turntable speaker all-in-one solution. As configured in this review, which also includes the upper stand and matching subwoofer, you are looking at over $3,500. But I am going to make an argument that I do not believe that at $3,500, the Andover Model One system is overpriced. I don't think that it is, because it does something that few components, even at that price, manage to do. And it creates a habit of listening. And therefore, at $3,500 for the system, or a little bit more than $3,500 for the system, it really becomes a question of what kind of value do you put on the act of listening to music more often? And that is where the Model One, in my opinion, comes good. Now, before I get into all of the nitty-gritty about the various sound aspects and features of the Model One, you guys know that we don't do a lot of deep dives into specifications, but obviously something that is as unique as the Model One with such a kind of all-in-one built-in design, you're probably wondering, like, what is in it? What makes it what it is? And so I'm just going to share all of the specs from the turntable on down so that you can see all of the various things that go into the Model One. And then on the other side, we will talk about how it sounds. So now that you know everything that goes into the Model One, I do want to start by talking about its visual style, because honestly, it's a big part of what is so attractive about this entire system as a music system, and that is its mid-century style. And starting with the fit and finish, the construction of the Model One turntable music system on a whole is fantastic. The wood veneers are of Eames quality, so if you are a fan of that mid-century kind of Eames design era, this is going to fit right in. But it goes beyond that. Like, there's such an attention to detail down to the felt lining inside of the pull-out drawer in the upper stand. Like, all of these little things add up to a big deal because it is an object. It is a piece of furniture that is then placed in your house that you actually want to approach and interact with. We have had multiple conversations in this house about what it is about the Andover products. First, the spin bass, which we've already reviewed, and now the Model One, that make it so that we want to engage with it and we end up listening more than we do through our other systems. And I think it just comes down to that sort of feeling you get and the ease of use. And I know a lot of people, a lot of hi-fi enthusiasts hate this concept of like ease of use or lifestyle. They kind of shun it because they think that quality is being lost to convenience. But the Andover Model One kind of proves that that's not really the case. If anything, the quality is there, and what is being increased is the usability and the frequency with which you use it. And in our case, I would start every single morning by waking up and coming out into the living room and putting a record on. Now, prior to the Model 1's appearance in our house, that just wasn't something that I did. I never got out of bed, walked up to our main stereo system, and put a record on. It just never happened. I would arguably turn on the TV and then start my day. And I have to tell you, the way in which you are programmed in the morning, the way in which that you start your day, the way you feed your soul when you start it off with music versus, say, the news or television, it's night and day. So that's just one of the traits and attributes that I do feel that the Andover Model 1 bring to one's life and bring to bear that then force you as a potential customer to evaluate, like, what kind of a price do you want to put on that? The Andover Model 1 music system is not going to replace a dedicated stereo or two-channel system. It's not going to best it in any way, but it's also not for that customer. It's not for the customer that wants to sit there and evaluate all of the little nuances between, say, amp A and amp B, or speaker Y versus speaker Z. It's not for that person. It's for music lovers. It's for people that want to listen and not for people that want to demo, if that makes sense. Because the one thing I never did with the Andover Model 1 was really worry too much about whether or not it was giving me every little thing. Instead, I just put records on. I just put more and more and more records on. Or I streamed from my phone to it more and more and more. And that is who the Andover Model 1 is for. And I'm not prefacing all of this, I'm not saying all of this because it sounds bad. So I'm like setting an expectation or something like that, where I'm like, I'm trading on your feels so that when I talk about how disappointing it is, you're like, oh, well, there it is. That's not it, because it actually sounds really, really good. And the fact that it is expandable with a dedicated subwoofer does make all the difference in the world, and something that was missing when we reviewed the spin bass that is now present here. So let's break it down. Let's break down what does the Andover Model 1 turntable music system sound like? Well, let's just start with the Model 1 itself. The Model 1 is a all-in-one speaker turntable solution, and like we pointed out in the specs, it uses a project turntable sitting atop bi-amplified loudspeakers. And it does have some rather nice DSP inside that does make this omnidirectional sound that comes from the Model 1 incredibly spacious and fulfilling if you're just getting the Model 1 on its own. I will argue the bass by itself, without the subwoofer, the bass is satisfying to a degree. It really does depend on the style of music that you want to listen to. If you are more into mid-range heavy music or classical stuff that doesn't have too much low end, I think the Model 1 by itself is fine. But if you like popular music or hip hop or orchestral stuff that does feature, say, a lot of drums or bass or timpanis, things like that, you're going to want to opt for the Andover subwoofer. And with the subwoofer in place, the scale that is brought to bear to the Andover Model 1 sound on a whole improves dramatically. Now, with respect to the mid-range, I do think that this is one of the Model 1's strengths. And it's very clean, very clear, a little bit punchy, and just a touch forward. So it's not warm, it's not overly romantic, but it gives you a really good sense and a really good presence, especially with vocals and small ensemble-like records. And I really appreciated that about the Andover Model 1's performance. I think the mid-range is where this particular speaker turntable all-in-one combination is at its best. Now, high frequencies, I'm going to throw out a little bit of a disclaimer. I am not the world's biggest fan of AMT tweeters. I'm not. I've never really cottoned to those particular types of tweeters. And yes, the Andover Model 1 uses them. They are not bad here. They really aren't. But if you are a fan of AMT tweeters, they are going to be exactly what you expect them to be. But if you're like me, and there may not be your cup of tea, I'm going to ease your mind a little bit. They are not as forward or as aggressive as some AMT tweeters are in some bookshelf loudspeakers that are on the market right now. All that said, because there is some DSP present inside the Model 1, as well as tone controls, which are accessible through the front panel as well as through the remote, you can kind of fidget and tailor the Model 1's sound to taste, which I admittedly did. I did. I'm not the biggest proponent of tone controls, but in this instance, for me personally, in our living space, I ended up taking the tweeters back just one notch, just -1. And I felt that just blended everything together really, really nicely. And when we added the sub, like I said, the sub is completely optional, but we reviewed it as an entire unit. And when I added the sub and I, blended it into the top, the overall soundscape, if you will, the whole presentation from top to bottom became that much fuller, that much richer, which, makes sense. You're adding a whole extra set of octaves down there that you didn't have before. But it does help to ground and make the sound that emanates from the Model 1 all the more rich and larger in scale. Now, in terms of soundstage, let's not mince words. The Model 1 is not going to give you stereo imaging. There is a soundstage. There is a soundstage, but it's not, right and left. There's a phantom center, and then there's, stuff appointed. It is very much almost a 360-degree kind of thing, and you are either largely sitting among it, or depending on how far away you are from the Model 1 itself, you are witnessing it in its totality. And so I don't want to mislead you and make you think that, the dispersion, width to depth, it's much more of an orb. It really is. And if you have it placed in your room the way that we do, and the way that I think a lot of people will, which is kind of up against a wall, you can expect that sound to emanate forward in a 360-degree pattern, but it's not going to break through your back wall or the wall that it is up against. It's just not going to do that. And that's fine. That's fine, because as an all-in-one sort of omnipresent sound for room-filling capability, the Andover Model 1 as a system is awesome. And the little DSP modes, Andover refers to them as pano or panorama, and it's kind of a good, better, best, or small, medium, and large. And then just kind of uses DSP and phase to create the sense of a wider soundscape. I found that medium, Pano M, was the best setting for me or for us in this house. It sounded the most natural and the closest approximation to a true stereo two-speaker kind of setup. Again, not true stereo sound, but the closest approximation. For me, large was a little too ethereal, and small was a little too mono. And stereo was nice, just the straight stereo was good, and mono is also nice, but mono makes the Model 1 incredibly directional. It's not every day that you engage with a record player that has a digital display or a user interface, if you will. So speed is selected via menu. Tone controls are done digitally via menu. Going and switching inputs is all done via the menu or the remote. And it's just nice. It's nice to have. Now, admittedly, you can connect other devices to the Model 1. You could connect, say, a CD player to it if you so desired. We didn't do that. I did stream via Bluetooth to it, and the sound was great. The sound was totally satisfactory, and I found the DACs to be on par with pretty much anything else right now on the market today that has Bluetooth capability. There is a headphone jack, which is front mounted, and it too works well very nicely with the PM50s, which are also made by Andover Audio. Admittedly, I didn't sit down in front of this thing with a pair of cans on, but I did test it. It does work. It is nice indeed, but I do think that the average customer or buyer of the Model 1 is not going to necessarily pull up a chair to this and listen via headphones, but maybe I'm wrong. It's just not what I chose to do. But as a streaming device via Bluetooth from my phone to the Model 1, and obviously as an all-in-one record player console solution, I actually love the thing. I really do, and I would not be surprised if people took the plunge and didn't feel the same. In fact, Christy and I were talking just a moment ago off camera, which we'll include in the members only section about if I were to set up a traditional stereo 2-speaker system and make it as easy as possible and maybe even as affordable as possible and set it right next to the Andover Model One system and ask somebody to live with both side by side for a week, which one would get used more? And I made the argument that it is my personal opinion that, believe it or not, the Andover Model One would be used more often than a dedicated 2-channel system. And not because it's better sound-wise than a dedicated 2-channel system, but just because Andover has done such a great job in making the act of listening to records so accessible. And the sound is very, very good, while not the same, good enough that you don't really worry about it. You don't stress it. You just get on with listening to more music. Which brings me back to my original question and argument. If you are a music lover and what you are after is the ability to listen to more music, what price do you put on that? As intrigued as you must be, what's wrong with it? Well, the Model One isn't perfect, and one of the things that's wrong with it is maybe its price. I know, I just made a big argument about how its price is irrelevant, but its price may be its biggest Achilles heel and barrier to entry because, let's face it, if we start breaking down the individual components, some of them don't add up to $2,499. In fact, in no way, shape, or form do they add up to $2,499, which means you are paying a premium for the ease of use, for the fit and finish, for the luxury, for the simplicity. You are paying for its usability, not necessarily for everything that is inside it. And you know what? The only person that can decide if that is right for them is the individual. I can't make that call for you. And honestly, you can't make that call for anyone else, because when we're talking about luxury items, furniture, if you will, yes, an IKEA couch gets it done, but obviously there are still people in the world that want, say, restoration hardware. And you may scratch your head at that, but have you sat on a cloud sofa? I'm serious. I know, little sidebar, this has nothing to do with Andover, but have you sat on a cloud sofa? Because if you have, it's probably taken a forklift to get you out of it because they're so freakishly comfortable. Hashtag goals. Because that is kind of the argument that the Andover Model One trades on or is making. It understands that you can do all of these things for much, much less. But the sum of its parts make it attractive that you actually want to use it more. And so what price do you put on that? But outside of its price, some of the other things that I didn't care for with respect to the Model One. The remote. I know. When was the last time anyone bitched about a remote and a turntable in the same sentence? But the remote is incredibly directional. And the range on it is terrible. It's actually so bad that I argue you're better off just going up to the damn thing and using the controls on the front. Yes, I was totally jazzed about the presence of a remote control until I started to use it. That being said, it's much easier to get into some of the Andover Model One's higher menu functions via the remote than using the all-in-one knob on the front, which you have to know when to push in, turn, then push in again, and so on and so forth in order to navigate all the menus. Speaking of menus, for $2,499, the screen on the front of the Andover Model One should be better. With respect to what else compares to the Model One, well, frankly, the only thing like the Model One also comes from Andover Audio, and it is their spin bass speaker system. And like I said, we've reviewed that. If you haven't checked that out, description down below, we will have the link there. But the spin bass is the most like the Model One, save for price. The spin bass is $299. The Andover Model One is $2,500. But they are going to kind of appeal to the same user, the same individual, albeit one with vastly different budgetary concerns. Now, Christy and I love the spin bass. We absolutely love it, adore it, still use it to this day. And I have to say, one of the better things, or one of the best things about the spin bass, is it allows us to use the turntable we want. And so one of the things that I kind of wish Andover would do, or maybe they will do with future Model 1s, is give you the ability to pick the turntable that sits within it. Because I do think that there is room where you can potentially lower the price of the Model 1 and make it a little bit more attractive, but you can also go hog wild and go with something super high-end and esoteric for the right person. But as it stands, the spin bass is kind of a budget or baby Model 1. It's just one that you have to bring your own turntable to the party. And for me, I actually kind of prefer that. Yes, the Model 1's fit and finish and its use of walnut veneers and the fact that it is expandable as a system with built-in shelving and a subwoofer, it just is a different animal. But if you are purely going off of, I want to listen to records in a compact chassis, kind of an all-in-one solution, so we're comparing just that functionality, I'm not going to mince words with you. The spin bass with a turntable of your choosing gets you most of the way there to the Model 1. But if you are looking for an all-in-one furniture solution a la the console stereos of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there may not be a substitute for the Andover Model 1 turntable music system. But beyond all of that, the biggest takeaway from our time with both pieces, and specifically the Model 1, is the fact that it created a new music listening habit for both of us. And I don't know yet how much that's worth. I just know that I need it and I want it in my life. And that is why we have become Andover customers. And that is why I am reviewing products like the Model 1, because sometimes products transcend performance and they become about enriching our lives. And that is honestly what the Model 1 and the spin bass before it, but that is honestly what the Andover products have done in this household. So that's it for me, guys. That is my review of Andover's Model 1 turntable music system. Please do let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you liked this review, it really does help us out if you give it a thumbs up, like, and a subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Recovering Audiophile. You can get sneak peeks of stuff here and there. If you are interested in all of the behind the scenes content, including conversations that Christy and I have prior to filming these reviews and little nuggets of information that may or may not make it into the final edit, be sure to check out our members section. You can hit the join button right below me and read about all of that. And if that's something that you want to do, thank you very much to all of our members and would-be members. We really do appreciate it. It does help to bring you content on a regular basis. Other than that, I think that is it for me. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And remember, the only person that has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much again for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye. Let's get into it.
I hated that. It looks fine. The sides have grown out a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out in post. We'll fix it in post.
A little bit less of the welcome to the channel. Yeah. Ain't no lie, baby, bye bye. Holy shit.
All right, here we go. Component for 2020. And it's not cheap. I'm getting to that too quickly, and I've lost my breath. It's just a lot. It's a lot to talk about. It's a lot to cover, and none of this is scripted. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Just comes from the old noodle. I've got bullet points so that I don't mess up the specs. Which I don't even go into, but yeah. All right.